Manic Pixie Dream Girl to you?
Expectations.
People look at you and go, I know who you are, and you're like, do you?
No! No, you don't. Have fun with that.
What words do you associate with Manic Pixie Dream Girl and that general stereotype?
Muse. I've heard the word muse a lot.
Yeah.
I've had people proclaiming that they are in love with me when clearly they can't be because they don't know who I am, and I know this for a fact because I'm infamously difficult to get a hold of.
Yes, this is very true. I booked this video like a month out. I said, I'm going to need you sometime in the next 4 weeks. Let's see what happens. Here we are.
Awesome.
Have you found that there are similarities between the guys that fit you in the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope? What's the general personality type that does that?
Loneliness is definitely one of those, and I certainly can't knock loneliness because I experience it in myself as well.
Yeah.
As we all do, you know. We all want to be loved in some fashion. The way that we have that necessity to be loved manifests itself differently depending on the individual and what our experiences are.
And cultural
Absolutely. Cultural influences, absolutely. It's letting that sense of loneliness dominate one's character and become
a defining trait.
Absolutely. It's that
people whose loneliness is the fault of someone else.
Mm-hmm. It's an obsession. It is a fixation.
Proud of their loneliness sometimes.
Yeah, which, like, again, I get. You know, I was actually watching a video the other day that discussed the fact that when you have clinical depression, like I do, I'm very open about that because I want to make sure that people don't feel alone in it. Big supporter of mental health. But
if you can't get your own brain chemicals store-bought or fine.
Yeah. But when you have clinical depression, the connections in your brain that are specifically linked to fixation and compulsion and obsessiveness are actually stronger.
Okay.
So therefore, when you have depression, you're gonna fixate on things a lot more, which makes sense if you've experienced it. It's just not one of those automatic conclusions that you would come to.
It's not your first assumption about depression.
Right. And so that really resonated with me. So I understand kind of a fixation on that feeling of loneliness, but when there's no attempt being made at resolving it or being more comfortable in oneself, and then just kind of taking that issue and then applying it to someone else and
turning
saying
that fixation to a person.
Right, or saying like, here, fix this. This is yours now. I don't want to deal with this.
This is my broken soul.
I project it to you.
Take this.
Right.
Yeah, that is super problematic. I think a large element that's at play here as well is the fact that our society raises men to be the like, no emotions and boys don't cry and be tough. You have to be tough. You have to be manly, and that very much that toxic masculinity. Yes, very much that toxic masculinity at play of emotions are feminine and emotions are negative, which goes along with associating feminine traits with that being a negative thing and that being a problematic thing. So then you get a girl who experiences human emotions, you know, like a human, and she doesn't treat the guy any differently than she would treat another girl. And the guy goes, feelings? What are emotions? She has emotions. She showed me emotions. She must love me.
Right.
Not how that works.
It's not the intention.
Yes. The girl does not go, wow, I'm gonna take this guy on a trip. Let's serve up an order of happiness, do a little side dish of melancholy, like let's spread out the emotional buffet. And then another element of this is the fact that men are presented the Manic Pixie Dream Girl as an acceptable form of affection, and society says if you are a lonely guy, you deserve a girl.
Oh, yeah. Well, and
that's super problematic.
That's how we get school shootings.
Yeah, well, that's how we get a lot of things.
Am I allowed to talk about that on this channel? Because that's exactly the mindset. You read these manifestos that these teenage boys are writing, and it's because they were denied sex, or they were denied affection. Or validation that they were not willing to seek as an individual.
Yep.
They wanted to place that pressure on their outside environment, and they expected that to be met, and
when it's not,
then they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
They haven't set themselves up to be able to handle it, and that's a problem.
And again, a lot of that comes back to the idea of fault. Like, the world has not given me what I deserve, and they feel like they deserve something that they haven't gotten. That's not something you deserve, or that's not something, or, you know, yes, you deserve to get love from someone, but you have to put work in to make that happen. That's not something that's handed to you. That's not something that just happens.
Yeah.
A dream girl does not bump into you walking down the street. And that's what they're expecting, because that's what's in media. And that's what common culture says is that's how the world works. You meet a girl and she's wonderful. And it's hard, because if you say that that's the problem, people think you're saying, oh, well, women aren't wonderful. No, that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying the way we're presented is frequently problematic, and the difference between like what guys think women want and what women want and what, you know, like, there's so many. The problem is the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope is like a snapshot of several different societal problems.
Right.
There's a lot behind it. It's not as simple as it looks on the surface.
I just noticed that you have Jack Skellington on your headband.
Isn't it super subtle, but it like perfectly matches my sweater?
Yeah. That's awesome. That's rad.
It's great. I've had this headband since high school, and I very rarely get to wear it because it very rarely matches anything I'm wearing.
And it perfectly matches the sweater. I dig it.
Tell you, 10, 12 years in the making, this outfit.
You guys look fabulous.
So, such a mess.
It's fine. So am I. We all are here. We're all mad here. I have very strong feelings about this idea of, like,
especially because it doesn't stay contained to media. It crosses over into life.
It
does. It ends up being an actual problem in your day-to-day life, my day-to-day life.
It's in the media as a reflection of real life, and vice versa.
Yep. Two sides of a coin.
The art is perpetuating the real life attitudes, and the real life attitudes then go on to create the art.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah,
I'm just
beyond words. So there are a lot of examples of Manic Pixie Dream Girls in media, and, you know, we could sit here and tell stories all day about, like, bizarre situations we've ended up in, like being stalked because you look like a vampire and they want to take your pictures until they get kicked out of the Magic Kingdom. And
I still have a book from a stalker one time.
I was going to be written into a book.
I'm pretty sure I have been, actually.
I was told what my name was going to be in the book, so if the book ever happens, I'll know. And then I'll go to BuzzFeed and be like, yo, let's do an expose of this my story.
The same stalker that gave me the book.
Yep.
And I think it's very interesting to note that it was a book on Myers-Briggs personality types.
Okay.
Which is interesting, because I think that is a display of trying to examine my personality.
Look, at getting to know you.
Right, and apply explanations. And despite any protests that I have, I specifically remember, I think this was right when Frozen had come out.
Okay, so about 5 years ago.
About 5 years ago. And I think the thing that was said, it was like, well, you're just like Elsa, you're running away from your emotions. Yeah. Yeah. That was creepy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's problematic.
And again, it's the issue of expectation, you know?
Yep.
And it's not the only time in my life where, despite me knowing how I feel
Yep.
about a certain situation and recognizing aspects of my personality and so on and so forth, a man has tried to step up and argue with me on that point. I've also noticed an interesting phenomenon that is befriending a man because you relate on an intellectual level, or you have, you know, like
You can hold a conversation
you have a
with them.
niche interest, but then let's say they get interested in you all of a sudden, and suddenly they start talking down to you, and they feel like they have to start explaining things to you. And that,
They stopped seeing you as a person.
and that's a very interesting thing to me.
Yeah.
And I'm usually able to overcome it because I maintain the same degree of intellectual conversation as
Yeah.
I prefer to with my friends.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting little thing that I've noticed.
Yeah.
Once that switch happens, then all of a sudden, this is how I approach people that I'm interested in a romantic or a physical level.
Yeah.
Fascinating, really. Yeah, I don't know. You run into that a lot. I think when you're dealing with, you know, I'm just gonna go with men in general.
Yeah.
Again, and it's a generalization, and I think this
Absolutely.
is not necessarily true for every man in every situation. It could be the same person in a different situation
Yeah.
with different people, because we are humans and we are based on complexity, and each of our interactions are going to be individual and
Yeah.
complicated, and you can't apply completely your previous expectations of people and assumptions about people work. You can't cross-reference other humans.
And you can't put a human in a box.
Yeah.
They don't fit in a box.
You can't. And women do this too. I think I see this in a lot of people. It's an issue of again, expectations and
Assumptions.
falling in love with expectations. And you know, I can't tell you how many times where I have had a man claim that they were in love with me when all I've ever spoken with them about is how talented I am and how beautiful I am and how nice I am. And like, these things are nice, but these are A, surface level traits, and B, without substance.
They are fixated
That's
on
really
an
the same
idea
point.
of you.
It's really the same point. But yes.
They are fixated on the idea of you.
I actually had a few other things that I wanted to touch on too.
Yeah.